did they keep their accents? I thought maybe that would be obvious, but you never know.
I mean, they had American accent.
It was a kind of a big cast that gets a mix of British. I don't know if any Americans were in the production.
I think there was one American and one guy. There is someone from New Zealand, I think. But it's a secondary character.
You saw it first. When did you watch Hamilton?
On the day it started, so on Wednesday
December 6th.
6th.
And I know that because that was my birthday.
Oh.
And that's how I remember the birthday. And it was all plastered Hamilton, or all the posters. I think there's still posters that came up, or newspaper adverts that says Hamilton opens December 6th, which is kind of interesting because it's a preview. It didn't actually open. So the productions that we saw, today is actually the 14th of December. I've just watched Star Wars. It was good. So now I have to, and at the beginning of the week, I watched Hamilton on the 11th of December.
What a great week.
It's a great week. It's a good week, and I'm very, very excited for both of them. For me, I got the tickets on December 5. Because I saw you on Twitter and I was jealous, and I said, I feel like I want to watch it now, and in previews and stuff. So I booked it. There was a spare ticket on Ticketmaster, and I just bought it. It was about £47.50, which isn't too bad. I sat in the stalls at the very, very back. Where were you sitting?
I was also in the stalls at the very back, but I think it was slightly more central. So I had the corridor on my right.
And do you remember how much you paid for your ticket?
Yes, it was 70 something.
Okay.
And the reason I don't remember very well is that I booked my ticket back in January.
Yes, and how did you get those tickets? The Gold Dust tickets, that is Hamilton, UK, London.
Well, it was because actually, I think you told me to sign up for the mailing list for...
It was so long ago, I don't remember that.
Yeah.
You can thank me.
I mean, another one of my friends was following the West End transfer.
Yeah.
So it might have been her, but I remember you mentioning it as well. So I signed up, and then that meant that you could have advanced booking, so you could buy, I think, a few days before general opening.
Yeah, before general opening, because there was 2 batches, I think. Well, let's go back to the tickets I bought just beforehand. So I bought mine December 5 and I got it in the 11th. It was relatively cheap, of £47.50, but technically my seats were in a restricted section. But from where I was sitting, it just cut off the left side of the stage, so you can't see a bit of the top left section, which there wasn't much action, and even if there were people, you could still see them. So it was a pretty good seat, and it wasn't too far enough so that the people's faces were big blurs. So sometimes when you go to the theatre, you can see them, but their faces are a blur, so that's not too bad. I felt that was quite, I don't know how, I felt lucky because it was, in theory, it was quite easy, in quotes, to go get them. And maybe because we had the pre-order. So I got my tickets as well at the same time. Actually, I got my next sessions are in June 28, which is in the stalls, which is closer to where than I had sit previously. But my second set of tickets, which we're both going to, is I think is that right? I think we're
we're both going in June.
we're both going in June in the stalls, and I'm going in February, and they're all circle, and it'll be really, really good to see it from above because I don't know about you, but I've seen the bootleg version of Hamilton, which I didn't know that the UK production was coming up, otherwise I would have saved my experience. And we'll talk about how the cast recording or how the actual clips or anything has affected the viewing experience. But generally, let's get to it. How did you feel watching it on, like, not opening night, but the preview night?
It was already great. Of course, I know they're professionals and they're not going to open until it's good enough. And, until the theatre has a roof again, which is the reason it was pushed back, because it was supposed to start on the 21st of November. And actually we were quite lucky because people who had tickets for the very first day were moved the first day of, the new opening. Whereas people who had tickets for later on in November or December were moved around quite a bit.
Yeah.
I know some people were pissed about it. And I understand them.
Yeah, it's hard enough as it is to get those tickets.
Yeah.
It was a surprise opening night. It wasn't, as I said, it's not an opening night, it is a preview. And part of me was confident because it is a production, it is a transfer. So I was quite confident, and I was thinking if there was going to be any changes in terms of lyrics or anything like that. But how was the experience? How was it on the first night?
It was very good. It was incredible. So I'd been listening to the Broadway album for a year and a half, I think.
Yeah.
And I've been listening to it obsessively.
Non-stop.
Exactly. Oh yes, I haven't been able to put it down, and I tried to pace myself because I thought I'm going to see it. I don't need to work it out, but it's just so good.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, you get really used to certain voices, and you have
and certain rhythms and certain intonations at certain things, and that was one of my fears as well. Going it so well. That's why I also kind of went cold turkey, like months and months. I kind of said, I'm not going to stop. I'm going to stop listening to Hamilton, and I kind of fell off the wagon a few days beforehand, and I started to listen to one song and one song.
But yeah, how was it for you listening to new voices?
Well, I don't know. I felt like as soon as it first started, the first few songs, I had chills, but not for specific parts. Just randomly, I would get like chills, and I felt kind of detached. And I don't know what I was expecting. It kind of took me like at least until the second act, if not partway through the first act, to kind of get used to it, because I was a bit. I don't think I had felt emotions. I was actually distracted by not even the main players. I think my mind was racing. Also, maybe this gives you some context. Is that it's the high security, it's ticketless. I'm not going to bore you into the details of how that is, because there's stuff on the net where you can find out how that happens. But you're supposed to at least come an hour beforehand, which normally I didn't, because I've been to Harry Potter Cursed Child. You don't really need to do that much. But I thought I'm going to come in at 6:30 as recommended. So I decided to line up for merch. I asked you if you wanted to get anything extra since you didn't go the first time, and I was going to get some stuff anyway. So I thought, hey, it's 6:30, might as well line up.
Yeah.
Little did I know that I'd be queuing up for an hour, nail-bitingly close to just thinking that I might miss the beginning, and I'd have to like decide whether or not to leave the queue and go to the show. So I was kind of maybe frazzled a bit by that, maybe, even though I did successfully get the merchandise.
Yeah, you got me the mug.
I got you the mug, and I got some like other bits and pieces and things like that. And I was just kind of taking it in. I don't know if it's previews or me putting my impressions on it, but it was really, really good. But you can tell it is previews and it's not in their bones yet. I'm sure they've rehearsed, and I'm sure that they'll probably try to refresh the production a bit. But at the moment they have a template, they have a Broadway version, they have now it's in Chicago, it's in LA as well.
It's in LA at the moment.
What were you looking out for? What were you expecting? What were your impressions as you watched the show? And maybe once we'll go through all the characters instead of going through all the songs, because there are like 10 million songs in it, and we'll be here as long as the production is. But what were your first impressions, your emotions as you went into it?
Yeah, so I kind of agree with you there. Maybe the characters will become more theirs, but at the same time it felt really polished.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a rehearsal or an experiment. It was just very good.
But they were very good.
Exactly, they all were. What you said about being really excited but not feeling anything for the first half, I was even more distracted because Lin-Manuel Miranda was sitting behind me. So we noticed, and me and my friend, I was with 2 friends, and we spent the first act we were focusing on the show, of course, and it was amazing. But we were also hyper aware of the fact that him and the original director and conductor, so Tommy Kane and Alex Lacamoire, if I'm pronouncing it right.
The director was behind me, I believe, as well.
Yeah, they were sitting, they were all behind us. And there was this slightly awkward moment when people started noticing, and so quite a lot of people turned, and we were in the seats right in front of them, and so people were just pointing in our direction, which was a bit rude, and just taking pictures. And at one point, people just applauded, and Lynn just stood up and took a small bow. He was cool with it. Like, it was clearly aware that it was going to be recognized.
Especially because it's Hamilton and there's already a fan base and it is sold out. And as a side note, before we even talk about the show, and the surroundings is that the person to my left, and I asked them, hey, how did you get tickets? When did you... Just making conversation. Yeah. And the lady was like, I kind of don't know. And she just pointed to her partner or boyfriend or husband. And I don't think she knew the show. So it'll be interesting. Like the plan would bring the partner doesn't know. And I've already have people in mind that I'm already trying to convert to the Church of Hamilton. It's kind of, you want to be with people who are like fans. And one question I asked you already is, how did you, who was the demographic that you could spot visually around you? And if they were Hamilton fans and they could tell the jokes or they were dancing along already, because I was already kind of bopping around in my seats for some songs, which we'll talk about.
Yeah, the demographic on that first night was definitely Hamilton fans, musical theatre fans. I saw, so there was one guy with a rent tattoo. There were people who had T-shirts, not the ones that they were selling at the merch stand. They had elections of 1800s, Jefferson and Burr T-shirts.
Nice.
There were people with pins from The Cursed Child. There were people with like Harry Potter and also I think Les Mis T-shirts. So like it was definitely kind of young musical theatre crowd. Like there were all the people who would have known about the musical when it was in Broadway and would have been waiting for it.
And that's what I expected from my crowd. So I was surprised when the person didn't know about it, because I would have thought the only people who know about it would be the people who know about it, because if you didn't get in that pre-order, you would have no chance. So I guess let's start talking about the show. I thought that we'll probably talk enough waffle about that, is that maybe instead of going through all the songs and the acts, maybe we'll do a summary of Act 1 and Act 2 and how we felt the show overall. Maybe go through the characters and what we thought about that. But sidetracking now is that just generally, how did you feel the whole show was as a whole? Because I have some thoughts.
Just give me your thoughts first.
So what I thought about the show is that I was surprised. In the show, there seems to be loads of numbers that could be the end of Act 1 numbers. You feel like you're watching it, it's like the climax, and at any moment, the curtain, there's no curtain, but the curtain will go down, and then the next act will be, because there's certain, like when the war ends, and certain things, that would end. So I felt, even though I enjoyed it completely, that it was actually quite long, the first act, and that's probably because it's so dense, because each song is such a huge picture, and if you already know the soundtrack and the show as well as I do, I assume, and just know all the lyrics and know the stories, and you've already read parts, if not all, of the biography and watched the YouTube videos of this, so you know how dense it is. And also when I was sitting, it wasn't restricted, but it was slightly restricted from the people in front of me. So I was always sitting up and kind of scooching left to right to dodge the person's head. So I was also kind of tense as well. So I was kind of tired by the end of Act 1. So Act 1 was great. And after having a bit of rest in Act 2, it was I really got into it, and I started to fall in love with the characters, and I started even more. Yeah, I also did this in Act 1, but the songs came up, and I just wanted to bob around in my seat and just cheer a bit and things like that. And there's some highlights, and I'm interested in some of the audience's reactions to certain parts, because there's one that I think is quite interesting, especially with what the audience is and what it's an American musical and American history that no one's really familiar with it anyway. But what did you think overall?
I kind of got the same feeling, because I always think, especially when I listen to it, I always think that Yorktown is the final song of the first act. I'm always surprised when it goes on. I'm like, what's happening?
In my head, when you listen to the soundtrack, I probably think it is the end of the first act or the disc or whatever. So it's interesting, yeah.
Yes. So, but I think the first act also has probably some of my favorite songs.
Yeah,
so that went My Shot, definitely. It was probably the first that I listened to, because historically I've been someone who always tries to wait to see something live, even with not necessarily with musical, but with straight plays. I don't really like reading them that much.
Spoilers.
Yeah, exactly. I'm quite happy with watching it for the first time, and let myself be surprised. But with Hamilton, it was becoming so famous that I could not avoid, seeing fan arts of it, hearing bits of it.
How did you find out about Hamilton? If you can remember that far back, before Hamilton.
Internet. I think because I know some people who are really into Les Mis, and a lot of Les Mis fans kind of migrated to Hamilton. So I started seeing jokes about dead revolutionaries, which could apply to both Les Mis and Hamilton. And I don't know, I sort of slowly became aware of it. But then at the time, there wasn't even talk of opening it here in the West End. And I thought, you know what? I won't wait and have it all spoiled by random people on the internet. I'm just gonna, go on Spotify and listen to it properly.
On a side note, I kind of found it on Tumblr, just GIFs of people who are not white in period dress clothing and going, wow, this is cool. It's not the first time this has happened. They've done this in like Casanova and other music videos. They've always done it in the past. So that was intriguing, but I think that's just the taste of it, and you just go down the rabbit hole of... Though, talking about spoilers, I listened to the soundtrack with the lyrics, and for some reason I wanted to do that because I thought it might be so dense and might be able to understand it more. Because I know that the lyrics are like really dense and there's lots of information, and I was reading like the notes on the lyrics, and I got spoilt about the affair that Hamilton had about like, oh, this is so... And I was like, spoilers! I kind of didn't even know that I don't even know that he died or who he was killed. But even though I know the speaking of the song, I didn't really, I kind of listening to it, not really dedicated to it because who cares about Hamilton at that point. And I was like, I didn't particularly know I'm the person who shot him and all that kind of backstory and stuff like that. In terms of the second act, that's when it kind of got emotional, especially after, maybe not even after Burn, but maybe it's probably when Philip dies, to be fair.
Yeah.
And it just kind of slowly crying all the way, just tears through that point. And then even though there was always fun bits in that was kind of good stuff. And it's part of the soundtrack that I don't listen to much. And it's actually one of the things I was very interested in is watching songs live. I was interested or really happy or willing myself to like songs that I didn't like, or particularly... Not saying I don't like any songs from the soundtrack or the cast album, is that you'll appreciate more when you see them live. And I think it's those songs that I think I would appreciate more because you see it performed in different ways.
Yeah, it actually...
How much did you cry, is my question. If at all.
I didn't. I was so keyed up. I was electrified, but I couldn't cry. I kind of wanted to. But yeah, I was... far too forgotten to even cry. But so there's one song that I usually skip, which is Burn.
Even though I really like that song.
Yeah, but after listening to it live, now I feel myself craving it and wanting to listen to it. But this is a general thing with me. The slower songs, whether they are romantic or dramatic, I tend to skip them in every cast album. So that was news. But what surprised me is that after listening to it live, I want more of it. So that was really good. And I think the second act has a lot of amazing bits with the antagonists. So as annoying as Jefferson is, he's quite a brilliant character.
I love Jefferson.
Yeah. And I really like all the bits with him being incredibly mean but also singing really great parts.
Okay, let's go to the characters then. Yes. I'll probably go for King George because he's not one of the least, but he's probably the famously the person that spent the least time on stage in terms of the main cast and characters. May I say the reaction of the audience? As soon as the guy who is basically, if you've never seen it before, I assume the person to my left, I maybe doesn't even know what the show is or what it's about, because I was asking what this is about. As soon as he came in, I think the audience laughed. They just applauded and cheered for the king coming down. And I was thinking, they're not laughing because they know it's King George or it's funny. They're laughing because it's the king. And the British audience, I found that interesting because I thought that Because after that, I mean, I was surprised about the audience not laughing and cheering all the way through, because that's why I suspected maybe they weren't all super Hamilton fans, which I don't see why it would be different from your one, because that wasn't supposed to be the opening night. It was supposed to be earlier on. It almost felt like some of them were like, I was probably the wrong impression, but some of them maybe didn't even know what the show was about. I'm probably wrong, but it was like America, America, America. Oh, it's the king! And because we're British, we kind of cheered him on a little bit more. So I found that interesting. So what do you feel about King George as played by Michael Gibson?
He made me laugh a lot.
It's one of my favourites. Songs are my favourites.
Yeah, exactly. And I think my audience actually laughed and cheered quite a lot overall, during the whole thing.
Yeah.
There were
great character, man.
In Cabinet Battle, I don't know if the first or the second, but people were actually cheering as if it was a rap battle happening in front of them. I mean, not massively, but you could hear and feel that the audience was responding to it, which was pleasing, because I've been to shows where maybe I want to laugh or something and no one else is making any noise, and that becomes a bit awkward. But no, when he came up, a lot of people laughed, I think, because he looks kind of like the caricature of a king. Like, that's if you were drawing a cartoon, that would be a king-shaped person. And then I really like how he gets further disheveled and just slightly more and more insane as time goes on. And by the time of the Reynolds pamphlet, I mean, he doesn't even sing in that one. He's just there laughing at Hamilton. And I think he plays it really well. And I like how angry he sounds at times, but at the same time, so when he comes on, he really wants the applause and the audience love. And then it's played out quite well, because of course that's what the songs say. But also Michael Gibson, he's really playing to the audience. And
yes, he's a character. I mean, aside from Aaron Burr, and they at some points, Hamilton kind of addresses the audience, or kind of, I guess so. Maybe I'm wrong, but he's the one it's like in Les Mis when what's his face, you know who I'm talking about. Master of the House, yes. That one. They basically are like singing and performing towards the audience. So that's always fun. It is. So in Les Mis, everything's like dreary and depressing. But this
it's miserable.
It's miserable, and then that's like, oh, it's fun. Let's have this song about a guy cheating. But that's a different play. Even though there's lots of overlaps and in terms of lots of musical theatre and just theatre
and
influences. And history in Hamilton, like it's got tons of it.
And fun fact, Lafayette was actually at General Lamarck's funeral, which is the event that sparks the revolt in Les Mis. So there is a Hamilton character in Les Mis.
Woohoo! Crossover! Yes. Oh, talking about Les Mis, if you want to talk about one of the characters, it's Rachel Angot. She was in Miss Saigon, not as Miss Saigon, but she played, I think, Gigi Van Tran, who was amazing, and in Miss Saigon. And then as it is in those kind of Macintosh kind of, that kind of crossbreeding, incestual pool. She also played, I think, Eponine in Les Mis. Is it Eponine? Fantine?
Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly who I meant. Who played Fantine in Les Mis. And I was actually interested to see how her character was, because I didn't see her in Les Mis, but I did see her live in Miss Saigon. I did see her in Miss Saigon, and I was interested to see that boisterous character, because when she sang live with Lea Salonga at the end of the 25th anniversary thing, she's kind of loud and brash and kind of. So I was interested to see her play Eliza. What was your impressions of just Eliza in terms of the character and how she played it? What were your
It wasn't surprising per se, because I'd seen her live before, but one of my friends commented was that you could almost hear her voice more than Angelica's voice at times, especially when they were singing together in the same song. You know, as a performance, as the way she played Eliza was quiet and, you know, how she's supposed to be, but just her voice is so powerful. That you could hear her more than Alexander at times. But she has a gorgeous voice. So.
The thing is, actually, she's one of the more maybe it was just me because I know some of the actors in some other things. I say others. I say one actor, but I felt like she had most not confidence, but she seemed to be more like the songs that she did. She seemed to be just kind of going for it, and it was kind of solid.
Yes.
As opposed to maybe it was just me being more hesitant or whatever. Not that they were, but they were all brilliant. They were all amazing.
Yeah.
The cast was really good. I'm so impressed by all of them, and we'll go through them.
Especially quite a few people who are either on their first professional roles or almost. I'm just so impressed.
I'm so impressed. But in terms of Eliza, strong character. I find it difficult. I don't want to be too much about the Hamilton story and the cast on its own, as opposed to actors who are playing them. And I just was interested to see. I was kind of hesitant about her, but not about anyone else, only because I happen to know one of the people that I know in the show and see how she would play it. And everyone's kind of knows her. If you're in the Filipino community, everyone knows who the Filipinos are in various different productions. Well, one of my favourites that I loved in the second act, one of my favourite songs is Can't Say No to This. That's one of my favourites. I know you find it a little bit sad, but I love it. And I just love, because most of the characters play two characters, but I think who plays both Peggy and Mrs. Reynolds, Maria Reynolds is her name?
Yes.
I loved her as Maria Reynolds, and she was just so sexy and sensual, and her hair was cascading down, and then the intro with the cello. And when it's different on stage when it's live, it's deep, and I love the cello, and it was great, and it was already into it, and it was the fall of the turn, the turn of Hamilton as well, and it was just it was just interesting, and I was interested to see how they would stage it. Because most of the songs is more visual, and you see the different places and stuff like that. But I just loved that song, and I was like, yeah, with her hair flowing down, I loved it. I loved her. And I guess she was also cute as Peggy, and I love the dichotomy. And one of the best things about the show in Hamilton, as well as the characters, is the dual roles and how she was kind of the no threat with Peggy and whatever, and then Maria Reynolds and her part in the temptress, the person that does just say no, and I think they say no the most times in that song, and he can't say no apparently, but he says no a million times, so apparently he can say it.
Yeah, he just can't put it into practice.
But I like the ensemble. We'll talk about the ensemble more, but that was great because the ensemble was the characters in the background, but also they externalized the inner thoughts, and that was kind of cool. And I liked they were the conscious, and the audience just basically shouting no at him, because when you listen to the song, it's they're just shouting no, and it's kind of interesting when you see it in context on stage, and they're basically shouting, "What the fuck are you doing? Why are you doing this?" And they're just shouting no at him. And you can see by the reactions and the way they present themselves in the song.
And I mean, speaking of the ensemble, Hurricane was another thing that on stage just blows you away completely.
Blows us away. Okay.
Yes.
I'll stop.
I think I've been speaking in Hamilton quotes for the past week anyway, so it's just it's intentional.
It's okay to me.
But yeah, that one. I like it musically a lot, but
it's a song I tend to not listen to, though. It's one of the songs that I skip, even though I love the song. It's the one I skip, but then it's one I enjoy the most while watching it, because just to see how that goes.
It just looks incredible. And as you were saying, all the ensemble kind of externalizes inner feelings and thoughts and all the memories, and you just have in one song. You go back.
It's history.
You see the whole musical again, and it's amazing. And it's
one of the times that you see the whole musical again.
Yeah, that's true. But you see it, and it feels like it amps up the stakes even more, because not only
You see what's at stake. Yeah. You see what is at stake. His past, his history. Yeah. Hurricane is when he's going to write his way out. And it actually tells you more of his history because, sure, at the beginning they say, bad stuff happened, he was poor, blah, blah, blah. But he literally, it was just a line. He put a pencil to his temple and this was like he specifically wrote himself out of that situation. He wrote love letters and made Eliza fall in love with him. He he made the country by his writings. He did essays and all that kind of stuff. And he just kind of...
And you get to see his perspective on it as well, because the intro is all sung by other people about what he did. Whereas when you get to Hurricane, it's him saying what he thinks of himself, of his career. And thinking that writing is going to get him out of that, but it's not. And I think it's even worse if you know the story, because he's signing his own death warrant practically.
One of my favourite things is when, I think Jamal, is that his name? When he's in his little seat and he's got his like writing desk on his lap.
Yes.
And he starts writing and his posture. I love how he just sits. Like it, sorry. It's just the cutest. And I just like, I don't know why. He's writing on actual physical desks, but it's always good at it. I like that.
Yeah.
As a side note. So one of the other characters, is it Lauren or Lawrence? And Philip, both played by Cleve. September. Nice. I think I was really impressed by his singing and his performance, and it was like, not that the cast was bad or anything, and Hamilton's slightly different, but in musical theatre there's a certain style of singing, and then you have like, everyone's a really, really good singer. He wasn't really close, he was kind of closer to that style, but he wasn't typical musical theatre, but you could tell he was a really good singer. And I was like, and there was a character that kind of popped out more than I would thought it would. Like the whole gang and his crew are great, but I kind of just like his. He just pops up various different places, and as Philip, it was quite cute, and he became child Philip and older Philip, and I was just kind of really taken with his performance as well.
Yes, I can say its performance as a small child. It really gives you the idea. I mean, I'm imagining, even for people who don't really know the story and they see him come out, and of course he's still a grown man, which caused some giggles in the audience when I was there, because it is a bit funny.
It's a musical theatre thing, and it's a show. In theory, they can do kids, but then you've got, it's hard. Have you seen Miss Saigon or Oliver or any kind of those things with Annie or Matilda where you have to swap them out, and this is,
Yeah, apparently it's really hard to work with.
It's tough, man.
And you have to hire someone to look after them as well, especially. So it sounds really expensive. But yeah, he just acts it really, really believably. So I think when he came out, some people were laughing, and then by the end of the scene, people were really into it. It was like, yes, come on, Alexander, like be fatherly and be nice to the little boy and whatnot.
I guess it's a bit of a combo, because I think one of his standout scenes is kind of the duel. That even though it's not him like singing the majority of it, he sets up because obviously the end of it is the duel and the death of both Hamilton and himself, and he also in a duel again with the first duel where they explain how the Ten Commandments,
the 10 Dual Commandments,
the 10 Dual Commandments, which was great, and that's kind of which is great. Because I kind of didn't see... And that's the thing, when you listen to the cast album, I didn't realise that they were the same... Those duplicate roles, or they were double acting. So it was like, so at some part you go, they're the same people. It's... When I watched the show, I kind of almost forgot that with him, because I just assumed that they were different characters, even though I knew that they're the same person. But I guess talking about... I think one of my favourite bits anyway is when Philip and Eliza are on the piano, and they're just playing the little piano, and then it's... sad.
Yes.
At the end. I just realised that when they were playing piano, they were counting in French. I forgot that's the whole thing about the duels, is that there's numbers as well.
Yes.
I just realised that. But there's so many different things that you might just want to pick up on.
I really like linguistically how the duels are played, how they say the numbers, but they also use the numbers within the sentence. I really like that.
talk about.
I mean, you could
dissect
write
each of the songs.
I'm gonna find somewhere to do a PhD on Hamilton, not on musical theatre in general.
Well, that's one of the things. Is there's lots of different influences just in terms of the lyrics and just musical theatre influences. But one of my favourite, and surprisingly, is the character of Washington, and he does a reference to Pirates of Penzance, which you haven't watched yet.
I haven't yet.
You have to watch it. But I don't know, maybe it's just because I'm a fan of the Pirates of Penzance, but when he does, he's the modern Major General. See, I can't even say it. It's amazing, and that's just one line. And that's the classic song that's got loads of lyrics, and it's very, very fast, and goes very, very faster. And I just liked that he was so dignified, and he didn't have and it was interesting that he didn't have two characters. He was just like Washington as opposed to, as well as Eliza and Hamilton, that just played one role, and Angelica as well. I just liked, he was one of the characters that I had no hesitation about in terms of, I just accepted him.
Yes.
And
he's actually
so good.
He's actually quite young.
Oh, how young is he? Do you know?
I really don't know, but because
he seems mature and older, and he carried himself. He was amazing.
I think he's in his mid-20s. I was actually googling him because I realized I saw him at the Globe Theatre,
right.
In Antony and Cleopatra, a minor role. So I was trying to find out more, and this is not his first role. He's been in Motown the musical before, so not even his first role in a musical. But he doesn't have a long list of roles before this, and if you look at his headshot, he actually does look young. But then when he's on stage, he's totally believable as someone who's over 40 and has had a ton of experience and is ready to lead a nation. And the Pirates of Penzance thing, it's real. In the book Hamilton the Revolution, Lynn does say that one of his first roles when he was still in school, it was in the Pirates of Penzance. So
man, I love Pirates.
That's why I put that line in. So you well spotted.
You know, that's also one of the standout songs. Let's not do our Pirates of Penzance. That's one of the songs that they always play because it's the impressive, crowd-pleasing one that there's loads and loads of lyrics. Though we do have one with one of my favourites, Guns and Ships. Which with Guns and Ships, there was a rumour that wasn't going to be in the show because I think that was a rumour. Someone showed the programme and took a picture of the programme, and it wasn't listed as one of the songs or whatever. And I was like, I was like, how can you do without that song? Right? It's intricate to the. So even though I was scared that it wasn't there, so I was like, thank God.
Yes,
it's one of my favourites that I do listen to.
Yeah, when I want to feel like I can conquer the word, like before job interviews, Guns and Ships.
Different about Guns and Ships. We're talking about both. It's hard to talk because you always want to talk about both of the characters in terms of Lafayette and Jefferson, though they are separate people. People. But how did you feel about both Lafayette and who played it? Jason Pennycook, I think, who played those characters. And that was one that I was interested in seeing because who played the original Broadway cast? David Hicks. He was such an impression, and his hair was integral to the performance. So one of the things I was interested in is seeing if they would replicate the hair. And they sort of did it. Tell me how they did the hair.
Well, he doesn't have as much hair as David Hicks, but they did a similar thing. Like he has his hair kind of slicked back as Lafayette. And then poofed up a bit in the second half.
For me, it was like half of his hair was poofed up. The other half was not.
Yeah, exactly.
Which was interesting. It was great.
It was kind of a hipster-ish kind of... I felt.
Yeah.
It could have been like shaved on the side.
Yeah, maybe.
Hipster Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah. That was kind of interesting because when he was Jefferson... because he was such a
Miami as Jefferson. I loved it.
I love Jefferson, man. I love Lafayette. They're one of my favourite characters. I like all their songs and just that becomes such a powerful character. That character, both of them are so great. And that's one of the things when I saw Hamilton, I just wanted to see how it would be different. In fact, I kind of wanted it to be more different in terms of more choices. And I've only I have seen the bootleg, but I kind of was side watching it by the side of my eye, so I wasn't really paying attention to it that much. But from what I could tell, it was kind of the same production. So I was kind of interesting to see if there would be much of a difference in terms of it's Andrew Lloyd Webber. Basically, he made it. Maybe it was Andrew Lloyd Webber who basically franchised shows, and then most of it's exactly the same in every single production with slight differences. So I was just interested to see his songs and the cabinet battle and his interaction with the other Madison, which not that I want to go against like Lafayette, but I think that was like one of my favorites is both Hercules Mulligan and James Madison. I was so taken with him.
Yes.
And it's just, I don't know, it was especially Hercules Mulligan is just great anyway. Mm-hmm. And James Madison, maybe it's just the pairing of both Jefferson and James Madison. That's just a great combination. I love it. Yeah, I don't know why.
It was very dynamic. And I really love when Jefferson does the mic drop and Madison is there to match his microphone. They are just such a good pair.
They're great. And they were played by Tareen Callender.
And in this production, Madison is taller than Jefferson. So there is a moment, I can't remember in which song exactly, but Jefferson goes hide behind Madison. Which, of course, David Dix couldn't do, really, because he's, I think, taller than everyone else in the Broadway cast. But that was a little fun bit.
I was just so confident, like, I was confident in Tareen's performance. Mm-hmm. I was just like, this is it, and I just love it, and I just loved all of it. And obviously, he's big brass numbers, and he was just being, and then he's like quiet, opposite performance, just coughing in his handkerchief or whatever. I don't know what it was. It was just really, really good.
I think physically as well, like the kind of the physical performance that he gave as well as the vocal. If I hadn't known that it was the same person because it was written on the program and because I know that I would have genuinely suspected that it was just someone who kind of looked like him in the second half. It's unbelievable how his whole demeanor shifts. I mean, I know that's what acting is all about, but he's particularly good at it. So with Jefferson and Lafayette, I just think we were talking about Guns and Ships before, and I was a bit worried because I heard so much about it and about how the fact that it had some of the fastest rap
and the most lyrics or most words in
per minute.
Yeah.
But actually, I was pleasantly surprised, and it's even easier to follow. I've noticed that for actually quite a few performers, they tend to enunciate slightly more than their American counterparts. So, especially as someone for whom, English is not my first language, this one was way easier to follow. I mean, of course, if I'm just listening to the album, I can check the lyrics and read them, which I couldn't do in the theater. But it was way easier, and I could hear every single word that was being sung, which, especially Guns and Ships, it's quite a feat.
Yeah,
and you could still hear the French accent, and you could understand every word, and it was still rapid fire. I was amazed.
You mentioned that before because obviously you saw it before me, and that's the thing that you mentioned is the when we talked about accents, we talked about you brought up how clear everything is, and the diction is really cool. And I was listening out for that, and I was like, yeah, you're right. And I don't know if that's because you are in a theatre and it's in the cast album, you're in a record studio and beforehand. But that was really great, just in terms of just clarity of story, and it's kind of different because you're performing it, and then you suddenly understand things in the lyrics that you go, oh, that's one of the things that we haven't gone into this character yet or the actor, but in this song, The Room Where It Happens, is there's a moment where Hamilton goes to him something about like I can't remember it, like you wait for it. So that's in the song, that's where he might have he's basically they're both swapping each other's philosophy, but ways of conquering things or the way of life or whatever. But there was a time where you physically see Aaron Burr go, this is you see that transition physically, and I didn't think that when I went to listen to the song again, I was like, oh, it's also the song that you see the change, but you see the physical change where it goes, oh, you're telling me to wait for it, and then.
And I'm being left out.
Yeah, I mean left out. And before he was okay. That was a really good song. So another characters before we go to the main ones, and we can go back to them if you want to. The other characters, I guess, is Rachel John, who plays Angelica. And one of the songs I also listen to a lot is the song "Satisfied," and that was obviously. What were your thoughts about? Because that's her main song. She sings other songs, and every time she sings, there's always little phrases in other songs that I like. That character's. And I love the original cast's voice. So what do you think on stage? Any strong impressions or what?
She definitely has presence on stage. Like it's a good fit. It's a good match with Angelica. When she's there, she commands attention, and I like that.
People were raving about her. I remember that other people going, "Wow, she's got an amazing voice," and people were going, and I was like, "Oh."
And I think that her voice is great, but at the same time, I think her performance will improve, because there were times when, especially when she had the fast bits in the song, it was the rhythm. So I remember reading about Renee, who's Angelica in the original cast. One comment that Lin-Manuel Miranda made about her was that when she performed Satisfied, she didn't make him think about the delivery. It was as if she was just thinking like that. And I feel like that isn't happening just yet here, but at the same time, her voice is great and her presence works really well. And I know it's just a matter of time, and it will. I think I'm quite happy for my June ticket, because I know that.
I'd love to see this. I mean, one of the things I was interested in seeing, not just even the UK one, when I heard that it was being. Transferred or not transferred, there's going to be other versions in New York or Chicago or wherever they are doing it in America. I was just going, because it's so fixed and you have these characters, and it's always the thing with theatre and long-term productions, there's always other people playing them, and I was just so interested to hear and see other people play these characters and how it'd be adapted, because it almost seems impossible, but then you go, well, people do operas and Pirates of Penzance and other Sondheim things, because there's other, I don't know how much of a fan you are with Stephen Sondheim, but there's also those songs with loads of lyrics and loads of words and that are complex, and people get they lose their voices when they sing those songs. So, it can be done, but it just seems so great, because it's a new musical and there's so many new things and things like that. One of the interesting things is the costumes of the ladies, even though I'm used to watching period productions on stage shows and whatever, is how big the for the girls the poofs of the dress, because the back part and the sides, and I was like, with one of the dresses.
I really like about the dresses that they change with the turn of the century. They actually Eliza especially, who has, I think, more change of dresses than Eliza has more change than Angelica. You can see fashion changing, and nice. from the corseted waist, it gets to kind of imperial
like Boston,
line dresses.
Boston kind of period.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, you might be right. I have to look out for that the next time I watch Hamilton.
Yes, but it's a really nice touch, and it works really well because most of the costumes are quite, as far as I can see, quite historically accurate. But then the set is quite bare, and I really like the contrast, and it works really well, especially because with all the double casting, it makes you notice the costumes more, and you're like, I know who this person is, or what this role means, because they have a military jacket, or because they have this kind of dress.
Okay, so Aaron Burr, played by Giles Terrera. I know him from Horrible Histories. What? So, I don't know if you've started watching it. I've been trying to make you watch that show. A combination of history and music and comedy and making history more interesting. So I know him from there. And I think I saw him in The Book of Mormon. What were your impressions of Aaron Burr in the show?
I think I don't know if his performance or just his voice was probably the one that was the most different from the cast recording that I've been listening to. So that was the one thing that it took me a while to get used to. And it was a bit of a distraction for me at the beginning. But it was just like, because I'm aware I've listened to that cast recording far too much. But as performance goes, it was really powerful, and
I felt confident with it. Yeah. I felt like he was. I don't know how much experience they all have, but I felt like he might have less experience or whatever. But I felt he seemed the most experienced person there in my eyes. I was like, wow, I'm so impressed by you.
Yeah, he looked like he knew what he was doing,
and I guess he is the main. Like he's almost the narrator, and it could almost be his story as well as Hamilton's story.
Exactly.
Well, when you spoke to me about him, I was kind of wary. I was like, maybe that helped me feel the opposite.
Yeah.
So some of the things that when I spoke to you about when you saw, I was like kind of half looking out for, and it was kind of interesting to see. But it was great, man.
Yeah. I like in...
I might have even seen him. I might even seen him in Avenue Q. I'm not sure. I'll have to check my program. I actually didn't buy a program when I watched Avenue Q. Maybe I did see him. Maybe I've seen him more than I thought. Interesting.
Yeah. But in The Room Where It Happens...
oh my god,
which is such a good song already.
Yeah.
There was a moment when he was so angry about being left out, and that was... I really liked how he broadcast his emotions, because he's keeping his cards close to his chest, and...
close to my chest? Yeah.
Yes. And clearly just the text of the songs doesn't give away much.
Yeah.
So it's one of those characters that really pays off being seen live. And even so in Right Hand Man, when Washington tries to introduce him and Hamilton, and they say we keep meeting, I always imagine that scene as them being quite annoyed at the fact that they keep meeting, but actually on stage they smile at each other, and
they have no real reason to, as far in the play anyway.
I mean, although Burr is being kicked out of the room so that Washington can talk to Hamilton alone. So at that point, you might start to, being a bit pissed at Hamilton. But they play up their friendship visually and in the way they interact.
Because Hamilton did say he's his first friend.
Yeah, and they did get along. And I mean, historically as well, they enjoyed quite a long relationship, and they visited each other's house, and when Burr did eventually get married to Theodosia, they lived almost next door. They both lived on Wall Street, and they were friends. They were family friends. Yeah,
I just got this from Lin-Manuel when he keeps talking about me watching the endless interviews and going how their lives were so twinned with each other a lot. Like their kids were like, I think they may have been around the same age, which was in the same song, and they kind of both they just paralleled each other so much. I mean, even said that in the song Non-Stop, where they both finished the war and they went out, but the way that they have their lives are slightly different, and their philosophies in life are almost opposite to each other, yet they parallel each other a lot. But man, I kind of don't. You end up talking about the text as well, even though we wanted to watch or just talk about our version of the one that we saw, the London version of it. But it's kind of hard not to talk about how great the text is and the whole show. But it's just, I think, because for me, I'm really intrigued by Aaron Burr as a character, and people, I think, see him as the villain of the story, and I kind of don't. I feel like one of the most sympathetic characters in the show. Maybe that's the Slytherin in me showing. But I just find it, I mean, in real life, I think he was a piece of work, but when I was in the show anyway, in the context of the show, I'm like, yeah, he's just doing his bit, and he's working hard, and he's trying not to get too much trouble, and not trying to, sure, he's not being showing all, not just, he has no real policy, he's nothing, he's not really standing for anything, and he's just trying to get on, but he has a legacy to protect, and he's got everything to lose when, Hamilton's
like, got some of the best songs, which is
some of the good songs.
I'm one of those people who find them not necessarily, not even the villain in your history, but they're just incredibly annoyed by that kind of attitude. I think probably both in characters and in people. And I really wanted to love him because he reminded me as a rather than as a character, as a role, Salieri in Amadeus, which is one of my favorite plays and films, and I just love it a lot. And I love Salieri, and I mean in that, Salieri is actually a villain. He, messes up Mozart's life, and we all agree that he does terrible things, and I can deal with someone who's being actively a villain. I cannot deal with Aaron Burr.
In the show or in real life.
Well, I guess both. He's
in history, he does from the thing. He seems to be done really dodgy political things. But in the show,
he's got great songs.
I mean, the hardest thing he did was like campaign against Jefferson, actively campaign. But that was a bit shocking.
But I mean, that was the minimum you had to do. Like, you want to get elected, you have to do some campaigning.
Did they actively campaign? Because that seemed to be a surprise in the song. They're like, you're actively campaigning against someone. I think you just put out your stances and then they'll vote for you and maybe on whatever, or maybe do an essay, like quite. But you're actively, because usually I don't know if this is the case, maybe you can correct me, but anytime like Hamilton would like write essays, or he would always have a pseudonym. Yeah. He would never write this himself. So you wouldn't really directly do it. You'd kind of, and this is why like Jefferson would be like, the whole thing about if you're second, then you're vice president, and if which is what I always thought. Like if you were second, I thought you'd always be the second leader, which seemed logical to me.
And potentially represent, another.
And on the other side. So I think that was like, you're active. But this is the first time that they switched, like, Hamilton became more like Burr. He started to talk less and smile more and do his compromise. Well, then Aaron Burr went, I'm not going to wait anymore. Let me be active and do something. This is what I want. And then that both they both screwed.
Exactly. They can't act like each other. That's a terrible idea.
Yeah. We talk about influences in Salieri. One of my favourites is Jesus Christ Superstar.
Oh yes.
And the structure of it, and I think there's so many loads and loads of different influences, and whichever you happen to like, you see more of the show. So I like Jesus Christ Superstar. It is called Jesus Christ Superstar, but it's the narrator, the point of view from Judas. I think there was a hilarious thing it was a TV interview, and they showed pictures and portraits of Jesus, and the interviewer went to, I think, Andrew Lloyd Webber and going, so this is a musical about Jesus, and I was like, no, this is about Judas actually. And it's his story, and he's a narrator, and he's going, they're reflecting on this superstar, potentially the difference between Jesus and Hamilton is that basically he was forgotten, which is quite ironic because in the end it was like, who's going to tell his story? Every founding father got their story told. However, now it's kind of, he has got his the limelight, or he's got some of the fame in the end, which is quite interesting,
especially internationally. I mean, I would not have studied the founding fathers of the US at school or at any time. I'm marginally aware of their history because it's part of world history, but I would not know personal details about any of them. But now I've accumulated encyclopedic knowledge about Alexander Hamilton specifically, and I think for a lot of other international fans as well. Like now he's the most prominent.
Yeah, and one of the things
else pales.
And one of the things that I heard on Twitter before I watched it was that they changed they said who John Adams was, and I didn't know who John Adams was until I didn't even bother to look. And I was like, he was a vice president. I don't know, whatever. He was just a person. But they clarified that in the British version in saying that he's a vice president. It's not a real job anyway. In those lyrics, and I think someone thanked them on Twitter. So I was like, they've changed that and clarified that piece of information, because some of the things you don't need to clarify because it's just context and they don't really need to explain stuff. And I was like, I wonder how the British audience would, because I've been telling people that I'm watching Hamilton and they're like, well, what? They converted one or two people, but that's kind of odd, kind of strange character.
I think
that we talk about.
It's still, I mean, except for maybe the tiny things that might need to be addressed or that people might not know. It's such a human story. It's such a character-driven story that even if you don't really know much about American history, it still works. And I mean, again, the audience I was in with might have been composed of fans and people who knew the show already, but I'm sure it can work just as well.
The popularity of it proves it to you.
And it definitely can. And the other thing they changed in the London production was before the final duel between Burr and Hamilton, instead of saying "We Hocken Dawn Guns Drawn," they say New Jersey, which
I didn't notice that.
I liked that verse quite a lot, and I don't think it was necessary because afterwards they do say it was close to the spot where his son died. Yeah. So they said that's New Jersey. It's I didn't think it was necessary, but they did it.
I listened to the cast album. I didn't even. I didn't even think about if it was the same place as Sundance until they mentioned it explicitly anyway. So, but hey, I didn't even know the history. The thing is, with American history, it's when it became popular, when it started becoming in my attention, knowing nothing about really American history or whatever, I'm like, I don't really care. I used to watch Sleepy Hollow, which is also about the Americans and the founding fathers and history. So most of the stuff I know about American history in that period of time is from Hamilton and Sleepy Hollow, which is interesting. And just especially when Hamilton became famous, then they mentioned Hamilton in Sleepy Hollow as a thing, and it was like, it was kind of interesting, and people were getting upset about that.
I think it's one of the things I admire and envy a bit about Americans is how they can spin and sell their own story quite well. They talk about themselves as a nation quite a lot, and it's kind of advertisement, and I'm a bit jealous that they managed to do that.
Well, in no small part by Hamilton, in terms of, I think he even said it in one of the cabinet battles, and we'll talk more about Hamilton and how it was played in the London cast, was he was saying, oh, sure, we've got a country, but then if we don't have I think it was the very beginning, if we don't have our finances straight, if that might have been my shot.
Yes.
I think, and he was saying, financial diuretic. And it was like, basically, we need to get our finance sorted, otherwise we're screwed. And he basically sorted it out so that the revolutions are hard. You revolt, and then it falls apart like in 6 months or a year because there's no stability, and that's
no long-term plan.
And there's no figurehead, and no one's supporting anybody, and it's kind of the stuff. So, he's a founding father, man. He really did create America, and some people would criticize that as well. Doesn't mean it's all good.
No, of course
also
not.
Especially nowadays with our financial stuff.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, let's not talk about that. But let's not talk about politics in Hamilton.
To be fair, at the time, I think that was probably the best they could do to keep a country together.
Yeah, it's tough. Anyway, let's talk about the man himself.
Woo!
I'll preface this by saying, if you ever watch the White House, for the first time Lin-Manuel does one of the songs, and he sings Alexander Hamilton, and he does all the parts, but he just sings the song that he wrote. And when he says Alexander Hamilton, everyone laughs, and it seems like it's a joke, because it's like, because he says it Alexander Hamilton as if he doesn't say grand, as if it's like, he's already a big deal. It's like, of all the people that you're telling the stories about, it's this guy that we don't know about. But now it's just kind of, when they sing that song, it's like, it's the grandest thing. He's the most, you don't know, he's all the things that he's going to do. It's amazing. He's already to the status of Washington already, even though nobody did know him at that time, which was interesting. So what are your thoughts?
My thoughts. The man himself, well, first of all, he manages to get through the whole thing and just be Alexander Hamilton for the whole show. Yeah, quite great. I'm almost speechless. And it's his first role in a musical, and he's had, I think, maybe two smaller roles in theatre before.
Just out of drama school now.
Yeah, he's 25. I mean, wow.
I mean, I was interested to see, I mean, also in the other productions, to see how it would play without Lin-Manuel, because it's so him, and because we know how he sings / raps / talks. It's so part of his, and like intonations of certain songs. So I was just really interested to see someone else play it and to see how different. And it's slightly different because I found it more of like, he seemed young, and even though I couldn't really tell his age because he seemed more vulnerable when he first came out to speak to Aaron. He was just like, he seemed like a lanky, skinny guy. He embodied that character, and he's kind of naive and looks young. And by the time of the end of the show, he was himself, and he was sitting at his posture was like a gentleman or whatever.
Yeah,
it feels like he felt like he was this brash at points. It was like he was just that character. It was kind of, he had a lower presence, and it's kind of, because Lin-Manuel is basically the writer, director, and the star of the show, so that has a whole set of baggage, and he was just the character, and he just sang the lyrics, and he just did the show with that character, so he didn't have to wear all the different hats.
And it doesn't bring with him the kind of the star power or the whole, you can be confident about singing Alexander Hamilton now.
Yeah.
Because the show itself and the character, but also because especially when it's Lin-Manuel Miranda singing it,
he's the star of it.
He's the star himself.
And it brings that baggage to the character.
Yeah, but I agree with you. He was more awkward at the beginning, and he was also slightly less twitchy and nervous. Like he didn't give that vibe as much. He was just like faintly terrified at the beginning and really, really shy about talking to Aaron Burr. And then just grows into his own.
There's a section when he was even within the song My Shot, and I was like, oh, he's already talking to Aaron Burr. They've just met, and he's suddenly, oh, I'm impressed by you, Alexander, to speak out. And I was like, wow, and I was like, it's a fresh character that's just come out, which is really, really interesting. And I'm really excited to watch. We're so lucky to at least watch it another time, at least. I'm going to watch it 2 more times. And seeing his character and how he plays it.
Yeah, and I also really like his voice. I mean, as well as his being good, just the sound of his voice, the timbre of it, it's great.
I'm so impressed, man.
Yeah.
I was just so impressed by him. But it's as I said, Lin-Manuel has got the genius because he also wrote it, so he's also linked to the smartness of Hamilton, and he's already got that power. And also, it's different because he is younger, and Hamilton, in theory, like he was, even though how old was he when he died? Is he
49?
Okay, so he was at 50, and when I say he died young, I was thinking he died at 25, but that's obviously not the case.
Yeah, see that. I'm constantly annoyed at that line that Aaron Burr says, I was too young and foolish, and the word was wide enough for him. No, you were 50, man. You were not young and foolish. It makes sense in the context of the show, and I know what it means that he lived to regret it. Yeah. But I'm still like, no, you were not.
Yeah. But I'm just, in terms of the past, I was always interested to see if the real Alexander, what accent he had, because even in the show they kind of said like he's an immigrant, and they kind of even like changed their accent to mock him. And I'm thinking just the real life. I wonder if he probably just got rid of all his affectations and stuff. I want to know.
I mean, what kind of accent would like Americans have had at the time?
I don't know. That's the question. I think they'll be like Britishy.
Yeah,
they're not Americans. They won't have American accents then.
Yeah, it didn't exist really, probably. And also his mother. So he was bilingual. He was perfectly bilingual with French. So because his mother came from somewhere in Northern Europe or something. I don't know. Yeah, my memory is not that great, but. And he grew up on a relatively small island that might have had its own, linguistic peculiarities.
I don't know. I'm just very, very excited to see more and see if there is, because in any kind of preview night anyway, just to see if there are any changes. And sure, it's linked to the American version, and that's probably a very good production of it. But I'd be interested to see if there are any tone changes or anything.
I think maybe in the long run as well, because right now they probably just need to sell it as Hamilton, and a lot of people
want to see it. Yeah,
we want to see Hamilton as we know happen in Broadway. Although, of course, it's not the same show and not the same cast, but maybe over time they will develop something different, slightly different.
But one of the things that we noticed is that compared to the other cast, he's incredibly tall.
Yes, he's taller than Washington.
Though to be credit, Washington did hold his own. As I said, he's so confident, and he's so he is Washington. And I didn't realize how much they looked up to him, the first president in all their American history or whatever. But but. It was interesting to see the height difference, which is great. I love a good height difference thing with him and Rachel Ango.
Yeah, so there was the one scene of him sitting down, and he was almost her standing up.
That's what I noticed as well.
Yeah.
That was really good.
And also there was a later scene, I think, One Last Time or somewhere around that time, when Hamilton and Washington are dressed very similarly.
Right.
And because there was that rumor going around of Hamilton being Washington's biological son, and they kind of look the part slightly more. Like you could see the rumor forming with this cast.
Interesting.
Well, slightly. I mean, they don't exactly look similar, the actors, but kind of when they're dressed the same, and they, it's one of those moments when even Hamilton is more quiet and calm and isn't pretty much running around.
I think let me talk about the ensemble actually, because they were great, and also there were some other key characters. So I think one of the great things is that they're both other characters, other extras. They also do the dogs, so they also play the troops and stuff like that. Yeah. They play the external, the internal, so they play the emotion, they're the history. One of the things that distracted me the most, especially at the beginning of the first act, was I was always distracted about the people on top of the balconies, either watching or singing or even interacting. So there's a part where I think the main cast, so the characters who played Eliza, Rachel Ango, and even Washington and Angelica, they're all at the top with their own dance movements, interacting and watching them as well. And I know that's supposed to be in the director, they're supposed to be history, watching them this thing play out. And just then, one of my favourite things, because there's some sets, there's the round, there's no curtain, is that one of my favourite things is when they write letters to each other and they pass messages, either one person would move the letter to the other person, or they'd pass it from one person to the other person, which was great.
Yes,
I think,
was.
Oh, that was really good. That was amazing. I think the best was in the song, one, My Obedient Servant.
Oh, yes.
Brown. What's that one?
I think it's Your Obedient Servant. Yeah.
Your Obedient Servant, yeah. And especially when it was letters and they were passing all he tried to itemize all the grievances he had with Aaron Burr, and they were just passing it. And that's one of my favourite things as well. The letter writing, as I said, I do like it. That's one of my favourite songs as well. I love that song.
Yes.
I don't listen to it as much as I think, but I just like the beat. And the thing, and he's just being so silly, and this is where Aaron Burr goes mental. He starts off that song with he starts "How does a bastard orphan son of a whore," and he does it slowly, and he's pissed off, and it's just great. And then it goes "Obedient servant."
Our Giles does really well. The slow burning anger, really angry.
It's just great, and just. I mean, one of the things that also distracted me or amazed me or I kept an eye on was just how they entered the stage, how people would pop up from someplace or they'd just appear like magic. And as I said, there's no screens and they don't appear behind moving, if in Wicked or whatever, they'll have moving set pieces and they'll appear. And I was just bloody impressed by the choreography and how they directed that whole section, because basically you could do that whole production on just a normal stage. You don't need, it's not a cursed child.
No, Well, I like that they have the revolving stage.
Yeah.
But yeah,
it works it's really effective.
It's really effective.
Really effective.
But not fundamental. And I like how it's really dynamic. I mean, you have so many scenes set in different times and places. And there are quite a few, I mean, the ensemble and quite a few characters are on stage most of the time. But the whole scene never stops moving. And, you know, they don't need big sets or special effects to do that. It's just in how it's staged and choreographed. It just goes on and on.
And that's one of the things I'm interested when we watch it again, is I kind of don't want to watch the ensemble because I want to watch the main cast, but I kind of want to go, how did that happen? When did they enter? And I swear that they were coming from here, and how they place furniture and how they... I mean, that's the trick. It's a magic trick, I think, and they just move a table here and a chair there. And I just... they're so impressive, and I guess it's directing, choreography, and you'd have to be really dynamic, and the lights. And we were at the stalls, but I think it'd be really great to see it. I'm really excited to see it in the dress circle, which I'm going to see, and see how they do the lighting from above. And it'll be a really interesting show to see it from a different angle. Those amazing pieces, and remember the lyrics are so dense, and like in your head it's so complex, and like how are they going to do this thing on stage
and show it?
I can imagine in a movie, but they do it so effectively, and that's probably one of the reasons why they won all the awards, every single award.
Exactly. And there, I think I really want to watch it more, also to get all the tiny reactions from not just the ensemble but all the main characters that are hanging around. So there was, when, spoiler alert, because this is not on the cast recording, but when John Lawrence dies,
Tomorrow There'll Be More of Us,
it's in the first act. It's just after I think it's after Dear Theodosia, because it's just Hamilton's just
it is.
he has a son, but then his best friend just died.
Which I kind of knew this. It's Tomorrow There'll Be More of Us. It's a second reprise to The Story of Tonight, and it does not appear on the original Broadway cast recording.
And there's one of the few spoken lines, because it's Eliza saying there's a letter from Lawrence, and he says I'll read it later, but it's after his friend has died.
I do like that song.
Yes, it's incredibly sad, but you can see Hercules, Mulligan and Lafayette, they're upstairs at the
reading
back.
The letters as well.
Exactly.
That was really good.
Really
I noticed
sad.
that.
And I think Lafayette cries a bit, and Mulligan takes out a flask and drinks. And I think there might be more of these kind of small moments if you're not just looking at the main characters. But I was mostly looking at the main characters because they were really captivating, and I mean, they were the ones singing. What
I just remembered as well, it's kind of nothing really to do with that, but just something that I noticed is that Aaron Burr Giles, I think when they did their bows, Giles was crying. There was actually tears in his eyes, and I was thinking back, where does he actually cry? I'm like, was he just watching the show again, and did he cry at the sad deaths of everybody? I'm like, he was like in tears, and then he was like, and he tried to like shake himself out and just bow and stuff, and I was like, wow, it's a really good show. And the thing is, what's quite good is what's annoying and great about being the ensemble and being around, if you've ever been in any production where you're behind, it's like you want to see the show as well. So one, you get to see the show, but also you always see the performances behind it, so it's never as, it's really annoying that you don't see it from the front. It's kind of good. What are the things that you are interested in seeing the second and third and maybe fourth and fifth time around?
So I really want to see more of the characters who are at least somewhat aware of the audience. So King George, and I think Thomas Jefferson at the very beginning in What Did I Miss? When he's just arriving, he, at least when I saw it, he got quite a bit of applause. And I don't think it was, he just started singing, so it couldn't be that it was so good that people were applauding. It was just that he projected so much confidence. He came in, like, I'm the king of the world. Well, I'm not the king because I'm Thomas Jefferson, but...
And they wanted to get rid of him.
Exactly. But, and then when he did, see and hear people applauding, he just kind of made a gesture with his hands, like, yeah, go on. And these kind of small bits are really interesting to see more than once, because then you see the difference in various audiences, and you see that sometimes they get played slightly differently. And I think, I don't know, I want to see the whole thing again. It's just so good.
I do want to. And I mean, after the show, you immediately re-listen to the soundtrack, and you kind of where is the London cast recording, please? And you just want it straight away. And Macintosh usually, I don't know if it's long-term running shows, but they eventually do like they did Oliver, Revival of Oliver, they did a live cast recording, they did a Miss Saigon live cast recording. So I'm hoping, because it's a different version, and they'll do a live version, and they don't do because it's probably cheaper and easier than getting them into the studio. I predict that there will be a cast recording.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, and they'll sell it to you.
Please. I want to hear
just to see another version. To hear another version of it would be amazing, and it would be more comfortable to hear other versions later on.
And I know I've said it already, that I really like Yorktown, but I want to see Yorktown again. I want to see Yorktown every day of my life, probably.
I mean, you can see the. It's interesting to see, like, I think it was in the Tonys and stuff, but I love it, man. I think one of my favourite entrances as well is, like, this is why I think I love Washington a lot, is when they go, here comes the general, and there's like,
what? Bits are just, oh my god, I'm so in love with that musically and visually as well. It was one of those, I knew it was a big scene. I mean, it's a battle, you know it, but man, there is a moment when light just flashes and they're fighting, and it's just stunning. I can't get enough of that. And also,
it's great, man.
And it's also one of those.
It's got all the characters, and actually one of the things, it got like all the characters involved. What I didn't realise, and one of the songs that I don't tend to listen to it because I'm really, by the time I'm really, really depressed and crying about it, is when Hamilton actually gets shot. And then it's basically spoken, and they basically redo the play without no music. When you hear it / see it in a show, it goes quiet, and and the way that they have all the characters and they redo the show, and that's something that works better on stage than me crying and listening to about it. Because as well, like the ones that I wanted to watch or see how they did was Helpless and Satisfied, just to see how they would perform that and how they would choreograph that whole section. And that's good because it has loads and loads of characters involved, and that's one of the things about Who Lives, Who Dies, Who Tells Your Story, that whole section, which I don't listen to it as much because I don't want to be depressed. But I love it as well because it's just, especially because Eliza basically ends the story because she's the one that tells the story. Yes. I'm like, oh.
I know. No, I can't listen to it in public. Usually it doesn't end well.
So usually the song that I end up tearing is Quiet Uptown.
That too. See, that one makes me cry for the characters because it's really sad for them.
And just Angelica, because it's also outside of the perspective, because it's just telling of how, and then Hamilton starts singing, and then we do.
Yeah, I know. But in Who Lives, Who Dies, Who Tells Your Story, that also makes me cry. That there is that one line, when my time is up, have I done enough? That doesn't just make me cry because the characters are dead and whatnot. It makes me cry for myself. It's like a slap in the face. Okay, what are you doing with your life, Alice? Come on. And I'm like, no, Eliza, don't ask me what I'm doing with my life. I'm not ready to face this.
And what Rachel Ango, maybe it's just the way that she sang it, was when she was saying that they had an orphanage and they all remind Hamilton. Okay. But that's the thing, that's the contrast, is that the reason why when I listen to the soundtrack, you listen to Act 1 the best, because the most, because it's the first, and you end up listening to that, and you end up either repeating that before you even go to the next song. So it's so joyful and upbeat, and they're fresh, and they're coming in, and they've got all ideals and everything. There's such a progression. Yeah. It's so dense in terms of the show, and I wonder how. No wonder there's so much to discuss, and there's so. All right, let's wrap it up. We just want to watch it again.
Yes, we do.
And then it will never. I mean, I don't know. I read that there are the works of the movie, which is great, but I kind of don't want it to be now. I kind of just, because also when you see movie adaptations, sometimes you can watch it enhances the show, but sometimes it just makes it kind of dry and dull and bare. But I think this show might stand up just because of the dynamics of the actual show and things like that. Yeah.
I think I wouldn't mind a film of the story, like not necessarily a musical film, or a miniseries. an HBO series.
But no, it has to be music. It has to be music. Have you seen that video of the cast are at the White House and they basically say the dialogue?
Yes.
Instead of singing the dialogue, it's like they're doing the West Wing walk along. It's really great. Mm-hmm. But to recap, we like it. It's amazing. It's interesting to see what happens in the future, and see how it grows and how it improves. And we have the opportunity to be in one of the greatest cities in the world.
Yes! And how lucky we are to be alive right now. I mean, seriously.
We get the chance to see how it is, and we get to see it on previews. The only show that I saw in previews was Wicked. And I haven't seen anything else really in previews. But there'll always be opportunities. I think I only got my ticket because it was on the website, and I clicked it and went to do it. So I'm going to try to stop myself to stop watching it in December, January, one in February, one in March, one in April.
I really wanted to go to the opening night. They released tickets yesterday.
There's still maybe a chance if you really want to work hard at it.
I went on the website and they disappeared while I was selecting them. But there is still the lottery, so I'm playing that every day. Yeah,
whether or not I can go watch it. We can play. I'm gonna definitely. It's quite good because it's not on the day.
Exactly.
It gives you a bit of time to take time off work.
Yes.
Anyway, anyone who's listening, thank you for listening. If you have any questions about the show or anything specific, let us know, and we can answer the questions, or when we see it again, we'll definitely do another little thing, catch up and see what the difference is.
Yeah.
Do any follows or anything like that? Do you want to say any contacts now?
Alice, and I'm on Twitter as Alice_Timothea.
Okay. I'm on Twitter at Rona Rivera. That's RONARIVERAH. If you have any questions, you can let us know. We could do it there. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening.
And
go watch the show, or don't, so there will be more tickets for us.
Yes. And I'm not going to use all the quotes. I'm not going to use I was in the room where it happened or anything like that.
But we were.